सम्पृक्तौ वागर्थप्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ.
मान्याः सुहृदः, कालिदास काव्य सौन्दर्यम् आस्वादयद्भिः अस्माभिः एतावत्पर्यन्तं कुमारसम्भवकाव्ये सर्गद्वयं परिशीलितं. तृतीयसर्गः परिशील्यमानः अस्ति. दिवसेऽस्मिन् तृतीये सर्गे स्थितं शिवतपोवर्णनम् अवलोकयामः. Namaskar everybody. We are going through Kalidasa's Kumarasambhavam to relish the beauty of the work. Now we will be discussing today the third canto of Kumarasambhavam, wherein is described Shiva's tapas. So we will be starting around shloka 41, 42, around that we will be starting now. So third canto, shloka 41, 42. And one interesting thing is that on June 21st we have the International Yoga Day, and as though a week in advance we are going through some of the most beautiful yogic portions of Kalidasa's Kumarasambhava, and we see Shiva as a master yogin represented here in this canto, and we will be going through the portion of the tapas of Lord Shiva described. And as I had indicated earlier, the tapas of Lord Shiva is described in the third canto, and the tapas of Parvati is described in the fifth canto. We will come to that a bit later. And the tapas of Lord Shiva is that of a siddha, so one who is very well established in tapas, so who is the very fruit of tapas. And the tapas of Parvati is one of a person who is a sadhaka, so or a sadhika, so one who is pursuing tapas to attain the goal. Shiva is a person who has attained the goal himself already, and who is himself the very goal of tapas. That is the background that is required. The portion that we have so far covered shows how the various divinities petitioned to Lord Brahma about their problems from Tarakasura, and Brahma suggested the solution that it is only an issue born of Lord Shiva that can really slay this Tarakasura, who is puffed up with pride and has endowed with very many extraordinary powers which he himself has granted. And therefore Indra summons Manmatha, and Manmatha boasts of his capacity, and ironically he speaks how he can vanquish even Lord Shiva in his tapas and distract him, and this itself becomes his undoing, because that is exactly what is required by the various divinities. And so now, with the onset of the spring season and with the arrival of Manmatha there, we saw in the previous portion the impact of the arrival of Vasanta, the friend of Manmatha, and the arrival of Manmatha and Rati there, how the entire situation of the forest wherein Shiva was performing tapas has now changed. So there is a sudden change of season, there is an untimely spring that has appeared there, and because of the presence of Manmatha also, even the various animals are showing the Shringara Bhava. So the descriptions of the bees and the deer, etc., has all been described in the previous verses. But then Nandin, the commander, as it were, of the troops of Lord Shiva, was on the alert. He is the very embodiment of dharma, and therefore the moment he noticed that there were some changes taking place, and the changes themselves were not being welcome changes, and that they were very distracting to the tapas that was going on there. So he warned all the Ganas there, the Pramatha Ganas. The Gana is called Pramatha because it is they who, see, while Manmatha is one type of a person who causes disturbance, so Manaha Mathnati iti Manmathaha. The Pramatha Ganas are also Prakarshena Mathnanti. So it is they who cause a great deal of agitation, especially during the time of destruction intended by Lord Shiva. It is then that they become very active and all that. And now, because of the advent of Manmatha there is a good deal of disturbance all over. So right up to the smallest of insects like the bees, and even up to the very plants and trees there, the effect of Manmatha is very evidently visible. But then when Nandin noticed that there was some disturbance felt for tapas itself, he gave a stern warning, not through words but by his very gesture. So Mukharpitanguli Samjnayaiva Ma Chapalaya iti Ganan Vyanaishid. So he regulated them by saying Ma Chapalaya. So give no scope for frivolousness here now. So, and this he did with his index finger put on his mouth. Mukharpita ikanguli samjnayaiva ma chapalaya iti ganan vyanaishid. And the command that he gave to the Ganas also had its effect all over. Nishkampa vriksham. The trees themselves became still. They would not stir at all. There would be no motion in the trees. Nishkampa vriksham. Nibhrita dvirebham. And even the bees began to be silent. And then mukandajam. Even the birds became very silent. So just now we had seen how the cuckoos were making the sweet note, and all that came to an immediate halt. And shanta mriga pracharam. There is a description of the deer moving about, and now even they have come to a standstill. So everything is, as it were, brought to a halt and a standstill. Tachasanat, on account of this command of Nandin, Kananameva Sarvam, the entire forest was as though portrayed in a picture. Chitrarpita Arambha Yuvavatasthe. So they are all now frozen, as it were, and they are not, there is no movement, there is no action there. So everything has become very quiet. So even the bees have become nibhrita, means silent. So nishkampa vriksham nibhritadvirebham mukandajam shanta mrigapracharam tachasanat kananameva sarvam chitrarpitaram bhaivavatasthe. As though depicted in a picture, so they are all very still now. So
निष्कम्पवृक्षं निभृतद्विरेफं मूकाण्डजं शान्तमृगप्रचारं निष्कम्पवृक्षं निभृतद्विरेफं मूकाण्डजं शान्तमृगप्रचारं तच्छासनात् काननमेव सर्वं तच्छासनात् काननमेव सर्वं चित्रार्पितारम्भमिवावतस्थे तच्छासनात् सर्वं काननमेव चित्रार्पितं चित्रार्पितारम्भम् इवावतस्थे चित्रार्पितारम्भम् इवावतस्थे.
in Sanskrit, it is common to divide animals into 4 groups. Those which are born of Sveda or sweat, So like Krimidam Shadyaha, so that is represented by the Dvirefa or the bee, and then Andajaha, so the birds born of the egg, and that is what is referred to here, Mukandajam, and then the trees, they are called Udbhidaha, and therefore that is represented by Nishkampa Vruksham, the trees are also motionless, and then Jarayujaha, born of a womb. So Shanta Mriga Pracharam represents the absence of the movement of the deer and other animals there, and therefore every form of life which was now deeply or steeply inclined towards Shringara now all came to a standstill, and they were all now motionless. And then Dishti Prapatam Parihritya Tasya Kamah Purashchakramiva Prayane Pranteshu Samsakta Nameru Shakham Dhyanaspadam Bhutapater Vivesha. And then Manmatha entered the place where Shiva was performing tapas. So, and he was naturally damn afraid of the very strict demeanor of Nandin, and therefore he avoided the sight of Nandin. So, not just the sight of Nandin, but the very range of the sight of Nandin, Drishti Prapatam Parihritya. So, avoiding that. Kamaha Purashchakramiva Prayane. Kalidasa gives a beautiful analogy from astrology. Now it is said that if you begin your travel when you will face the Venus, so it's going to be a disastrous one. So he quotes one astrological work, Malinatha quotes one astrological work, Prati Shukram Prati Budham Pratyangarakameva Api Shakrasamo Raja Hrita Sainyo Nivartate. So even if it is Indra who is proceeding, so if he sees the Shukra in front of him, so then he is bound to fail and he will have to retreat facing a severe defeat. So that way it would be an utter failure, and therefore afraid of facing Nandin, Kama or Manmatha avoided Nandin, and then Pranteshu Samsakta Nameru Shakham Dhyanaspadam Bhutapater Vivesha. So he entered the place where Lord Shiva was performing his tapas, performing his dhyana, and the way he entered and the place he entered are also very beautifully described here. Shiva needed privacy, and therefore there was a place which was very secluded because of the growth of the Nameru trees. The Nameru trees grow right from the very bottom, and therefore that helps seclusion, total seclusion for the tapas of Shiva, and at the same time it also helped the secret entry of Manmatha. He was not visible to anybody because of the thickly grown Nameru trees. So, Pranteshu Samsakta Nameru Shakham. So, Samsakta shows the thickly grown trees. Dhyanaspadam Bhutapater Vivesha. He entered the spot where Bhutapati, Shiva, the Lord of the Bhutas or the Ganas, so was performing tapas. Aspada refers to the place, Dhyanaspada refers to the place where Lord Shiva was performing his tapas. Sadevadarudrama Vedikayam Shardula Charma Vivadhanavatyam Asinam Asanna Sharirapata Striyambakam Sanyaminam Dadarsha. And there he beheld Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva was absorbed in tapas. How did Shiva look? This is described in the next 6 verses. One of the most graphic and poetic and spiritual descriptions that we can come across in Kalidasa's works or in any other work for that matter. So, Shiva is seated upon a platform beneath the Devadaru tree. Saha Devadaru Druma Vedikayam. Vedika is the platform. And he is seated on a sort of a carpet made of the tiger skin. So, Shardula Charma Vyavadhana Vatyam. It is said that the skin of the tiger is very much conducive for the attainment of moksha. There is a saying in Sanskrit, Moksha Shrir Vyaghra Charmani. So, the Vyaghra Charma or the hide of the tiger is very useful for those who are performing tapas in order to attain moksha or liberation. So, the different skins may have different effects, and the Vyaghra Charma is very useful for that. So, those who are working for the protection of the animals, the Kupas and the Petas, so they may take umbrage at such statements that we get in our philosophical and yogic works. So this does not actually mean that a tiger has to be killed or a deer has to be killed. There are many who kill them for their own purposes, and the hide of those animals are not useful for them, which they discard. In fact, the Buddha was once asked this very question as to whether he would be encouraging himsa on account of using such things. So the deer skin that he was using, for example. So he says, I do not order an animal to be killed for the sake of my tapas. So what is available, I make use of it. Therefore, if nobody on earth would kill a tiger or a deer, then if a person kills that animal for the sake of his tapas, then it can be something unwelcome. But that is not anyhow the case. The animal might have died naturally, or the animal might have been killed by somebody, by some hunter, and there is absolutely nothing wrong by making use of the tiger skin or the deer skin for the sake of tapas. So it is to the credit of our rishis that they had found out the properties of matter in these ways, in a way the spiritual properties of matter. We are all familiar with the physical properties and chemical properties, but there are also some spiritual properties of many materials, and it is to the credit of our sages to have discovered these. And therefore, Shardula Charma Vyavadhanavatyam, Vyavadhana is covering. So upon the covering of the Shardula Charma or the tiger skin, so he is seated there. So beneath the Devadaru tree there is a platform. Upon the platform there is this tiger's skin that is spread out, and Asinam, so he is there, seated there. And then Kalidasa says, Asanna Sharira Pataha Triyambakam Sanyaminam Dadarsha. And Manmatha saw there, Saha Dadarsha, that Manmatha saw Triyambaka, Shiva, the three-eyed, who is the Sanyamin, so a person of supreme self-control. In Sanskrit, there is this root yamu, which itself means to control. So the form is yachati. We can see that those who have some knowledge of grammar, yachati means to give. So he gives, yachati. So that is from a different root, from root da, which also has the same form. But this is from a different root called root yamu. So for which we also have the same set of forms, namely yachati, yachataha, yachanti. Therefore in Sanskrit, the word yachati or niyachati means to control. So he controls. So the words yama and niyama are formed from this root. And therefore, yamin is a person, or a person, yata is one who is self-controlled. And therefore yati is also a person who is self-controlled. And therefore yata, yati, yami, sanyami, all these mean the same thing. And therefore sanyaminam means a person of great self-mastery. So some intensifies the meaning of the upasarga. And he is three-eyed, triyambakam sanyaminam dadarsha. So the word for Shiva is sometimes given as triyambaka. So 3 plus ambaka would be triyambaka. But sometimes it is also used as triyambaka for two reasons. One, for the needs of the meter here. So, and secondly, the word triyambaka is used in the Vedic literature also, and therefore it is justified here. And Kalidasa uses one beautiful expression here, asanna sharira pataha saha. So that Manmatha, whose death was imminent, so it is said in anticipation and in certitude that Manmatha was destined to die now, so shortly. So asinam asanna sharira pataha. So Manmatha was about to die. So sharira pata is the falling off of the body, or the death of the body, which was close at hand, asanna. So that Manmatha now saw Lord Shiva.
सदेवदारुद्रुमवेदिकायां शार्दूलचर्मव्यवधानवत्यां आसीनम् आसन्नशरीरपातः त्र्यम्बकं संयमिनं ददर्श सः आसन्नशरीरपातः देवदारुद्रुमवेदिकायां शार्दूलचर्मव्यवधानवत्यां त्र्यम्बकम् आसीनं ददर्श सः संयमिनं ददर्श.
When Manmatha saw Shiva absorbed in tapas, how did Shiva look like? So the way Manmatha looks at Shiva and how Shiva is are beautifully captured here. As I said, there are 6 verses which are describing the tapas of Shiva. Now, what do these verses describe? They describe the bodily posture of Lord Shiva. So we are going through now shloka number 45 to 50. These 6 shlokas give the description of Shiva's tapas, the bodily posture of the Lord. So the upper portion of the body, the shoulders, the hands, his jata, and then his ears, his throat, his dress, his eyes. His eyes are paid special attention to. So the pupils of the eyes, the eyebrows and the eyelashes, and then the breath and prana of Lord Shiva, and the glow on his face and the condition of his mind. All these are described in the following verses. So this shloka gives a description of the bodily posture of Lord Shiva's tapas. Paryanka bandhasthira purvakayam rijvayatam sannamito uttana panidvaya sanniveshat prafulla rajevam ivanka madhye. As these 6 shlokas form a single sentence, so they are known as kulaka. If 2 shlokas form a single sentence, then they are called yugma. If 3 shlokas form one sentence, it is called visheshaka. If 4 sentences form one sentence, it is called kalapaka, and more than 4, it is called kulaka. So we have an instance of kulaka here, where several shlokas join to become one sentence. So Shiva is seated in what is called Paryanka Bandha. Paryanka Bandha Sthira Purvakayam Rijvayatam Sannamito Bhayamsam Uttana Panidvaya Sanniveshat Prafulla Rajevam Ivanka Madhye. So this Paryanka Bandha is what is also known as Virasana. But the Virasana as current today is a bit different from the one that has been described here. So almost every commentary glosses Paryanka Bandha as Virasana, and the description is given of Virasana in this way. Ekam pada mathaikasmin vinyasya urautu samsthitam itarasmim stathaivorum virasana mudahritam. So one leg kept on one thigh and another on the other, so that becomes virasana. So he is seated like that. Paryanka bandha sthira purvakayam, the upper portion of the body is firm on account of that. So we know that the very definition of asana given in the yoga texts, typically in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, is sthira sukham asanam. So normally, if we are sitting in a very comfortable way, we will keep moving our body, shifting our position again and again and so on. That should not be the case. On the other hand, the body should be very steady and very firm. If you try to sit steady and very firm, then after a few minutes you will begin to feel discomfort in the body. But that should not be the case. It is only a person who has attained asana jaya that can sit in a very comfortable position for a very long time, and Shiva was seated in that position now. So Paryanka Bandha Sthira Purvakayam, the upper portion of the body is very firm, sthira, and then Rijvayatam, it is straight and erect, and it is well stretched. So it is not bending, there is no stooping of the body. So it is not in a very sagging position. So the yogic posture is one where the body is quite taut. So T-A-U-T, taut. So it's quite fit, and it is sitting in a posture which is quite erect and stretched. So Rijvayatam Sannamita Ubhayamsam. But his shoulders are a bit bent slightly lowards. So they are the shoulders are lowered a little. Sannamita Ubhayamsam. Both the shoulders. Amsa is shoulder. Sannamita Ubhayamsam. And why are the shoulders a little lowered? And that is because Uttana Panidvaya Sanniveshat Praphulla Rajivam Ivanka Madhye. So he has placed his hands one above the other in the Uttana position. Uttana is open, so or facing upwards. So when we sleep facing, with our face upwards, so that is called Uttana. And many people commit the mistake of writing or speaking of the name of the asana as Paschimottanasana. There is no question of Uttana there, it is only Uttana, and therefore Uttana Panidvaya. The two hands are placed facing a palm upwards. So Uttana Panidvaya Sanniveshat, on account of the placing of the two hands one above the other, the left hand is placed first, and upon that is the right hand placed. So it looked as though it was Praphulla Rajivam. So it's a lotus in full bloom. Phulla is blooming. So Praphulla is fully bloomed. So fully blossomed lotus Rajivam. Anka Madhye. So upon his lap. Anka is lap. Upon the lap of Lord Shiva. So he is placed the two hands. So the two hands are placed there, and that looks like a lotus that is placed there upon his lap. So obviously there is a suggestion that his hands, so the palms of his hands resemble the lotus. And so this is the description of the Paryanka Bandha posture. So as I told earlier, so Ekam Padam Adhaikasmin Vinyasya Urautu Samsthitam Itarasmim Stathaivorum Virasanam Udahratam. And in another text on yoga, it is said, so cited by Malinatha, Uttanite Karatale Karam Uttanitam Param. So one Karatala or palm is Uttanita, so it placed facing upwards. Karam Uttanitam Param, another hand is also placed. Adaya Ankagratam Kritva Dhyayed Yaha. So it is only such a person who has is seated like that can hope for higher experiences. So this is the posture that is given. In fact, we get a very good parallel in on the Mrichikatika of Shudraka, the Nandi verse of which also describes the same posture of Shiva. I will just read out the verse. Paryanka Granthi Baddha Duganita Bhujaga Shlesha Samvita Jano Rantah Prana Varodha Viparata Sakala Jnana Ruddhendriyasya Atman Atmanameva Vipagata Karanam Pashyatas Tattva Drishtya Shambhor Vahpatu Shunye Kshanaghatita Laya Brahma Lagna Samadhi. So this verse also gives a beautiful description of the Paryanka Bandha that is described here. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have a description in the 6th chapter of the right posture for yoga and dhyana. So the Bhagavad Gita says, Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam Dharayan Achalam Sthiraha Samprekshya Nasikagram Swam Dishaschanavalokayan. So the Kaya, Shiras and Griva, the body, the neck and the head should all be aligned. So quite erect. Dharayan Achalam Sthiraha. So they should not be moving at all, and the entire frame should be very firm. Samprekshya Nasikagram Swam, and focusing on the tip of one's nose, and Dishascha Anavalokayan, so looking in no direction otherwise. So that is the way one must be seated. And there is also the firmness of the body and the stiffness of the body also indicated in many yogic texts as, for example, Hatha Yoga Pradipika says, Kashthavajjayate dehaha unmanyavasthaya dhruvam. So the body remains as firm as that, and therefore the steadiness, the erectness and the stiffness of the body is very well described here. We will go to the next verse. Bhujangamunnadha jatakalapam Karnavasakta Digunaksha Kantaprabhasanga Visheshanilam Krishnatwacham Granthimatim Dadhanam. So, he has tied his jata or matted hair with the bhujangama, with the serpent itself. So, you have heard of the serpent and the rope. So, as one mistaken for the other, here is a case of the serpent used as a rope. So, bhujangamonnadha jata kalapam. So, the jata kalapa or the cluster of the matted hair has been very well tied up with the serpent. Bhujangamonnadha jata kalapam karnavasakta digunaksha sutram. And as he is not performing his japa now, the japa mala cannot be held in the hand, and therefore the japa mala has to be placed in a right place. And it is said in Yoga Shastras and even in Dharma Shastras that the right ear is a very sacred place, and therefore the Akshasutra or the Japamala is placed upon his ear, Karnavasakta. So it's now hanging from his ear, and so that it may not hang too long and be touching his body, so it has been made twofold, Diguna. So it is made twofold. The Akshasutra is the same as the Rudraksha Sutra. So there are 50 beads normally, or 108 beads in the Japamala. So that is representative of, for example, the word Aksha itself is derived from the letter A to the letter Ksha. So there are 50 Bijaksharas there, and therefore the Rudraksha Bija is chosen for the formation of this Akshasutra or this Japamala. And both the ears are said to be sacred. So in fact, the general norm that is taken up in Dharma Shastras is all the parts of the body above the navel are sacred and the parts below the body are not. So what is called Medhya and not Medhya. So this description occurs in Manusmriti also, and therefore especially the place where the sense organs are the ones which are considered most sacred. So what is below the navel is not sacred, and what is above the navel is considered sacred. And even there the head is considered as very sacred because it is the apex sensorium. That is where all the sense organs are, the knowledge that we get from the world. So it is from the sense organs that are located in the head that we get them. So the eyes, the ears, the nose and the tongue, they are all there in the head. Of course the skin is there all over the body. So the skin is there on the head also, on the face also, and therefore all the sense organs are there in the face, and therefore the face itself is considered very sacred. And there is also the concept of Shrotrachamana, where when we yawn, say unexpectedly, we touch the ear to perform the Shuddhi. And in Dharma Shastras, they say that if there is no water available for washing our hands and feet sometimes, so even touching the sense organs itself is an elevating factor. That's why they say the words that are used in the Dharma Shastras is Khan Upasprishya. Kha is the Indriya. So the sense organs, they are called Kha, and therefore Khani Upasrishya. Upasprishya means touching them. So Lord Shiva has placed the Akshasutra in a twofold manner upon his ear, very likely the right ear, because the right ear is considered as even more sacred, and that is why the Mantropadesha is done in the right ear only. So Kantaprabhasanga Vishesha Nilam Krishnatwacham Granthimatim Tadhanam, and he has worn the deer skin. So Krishnatwacham, the dark skin. So obviously Krishna Mrigatvacham, so it is the skin of the antelope that he is wearing, and even that has a knot, Granthimatim Dadhanam, and the knot is also tied actually in certain particular spots which are all decided by the Yoga Shastra. And Kantha Prabhasanga Vishesha Neelam, Shiva is known as himself Neelakantha, and there is this Krishnatvacha. So Neela refers to the dark color, and therefore the dark necked Shiva he is now wearing this dark skin of the dark antelope, and Kalidasa says that the skin of the deer is now looking the more dark on account of the reflection of the bright dark color of the neck of Shiva. Kantha Prabha is the glow on his kantha or throat. Asanga Vishesha Nilam, and therefore the skin of the deer has become darker on account of that. So he is wearing that. So such Sanyaminam Manmatha Sa Saha Sanyaminam Dadarsha. So every word in the shloka refers to Lord Shiva. So as a Sanyamin.
पर्यङ्कबन्धस्थिरपूर्वकायं ऋज्वायतं सन्नमितोऽभयांसम् उत्तानपाणिद्वय सन्निवेशात् उत्तानपाणिद्वय सन्निवेशात् प्रफुल्लराजीवम् इवाङ्कमध्ये पर्यङ्कबन्धस्थिरपूर्वकायं ऋज्वायतं सन्नमितोऽभयांसम् उत्तानपाणिद्वय सन्निवेशात् प्रफुल्लराजीवम् अङ्कमध्ये इव प्रफुल्लराजीवम् अङ्कमध्ये इव संयमिनं ददर्श भुजङ्गमोन्नद्धजटाकलापम् कर्णावसक्तद्विगुणाक्षसूत्रम् कण्ठप्रभासङ्गविशेषनीलां कृष्णत्वचं ग्रन्थिमतीं दधानं भुजङ्गमोन्नद्ध जटाकलापम् जटाकलापम् उन्नद्ध जटाकलापं भुजङ्गमोन्नद्ध जटाकलापं कर्णावसक्तद्विगुणाक्षसूत्रम् कण्ठप्रभासङ्गविशेषनीलां कृष्णत्वचं ग्रन्थिमतीं दधानं संयमिनं ददर्श संयमिनं ददर्श.
In the next verse, the description of the eyes of Shiva in the state of dhyana is given. Kinchit prakashasthimitogratarayir bhruvikriyayam virata prasangaihi netraihi avispandita pakshmamalaihi lakshyikrita ghranam adho mayukhaihi. So, netraihi lakshyikrita ghranam. So, with his eyes, he is now focusing on the tip of the nose. Lakshyikrita means targeting or focusing on. Ghranam is the nasika. So, nasikagra is what is intended. So, Lakshyikrita ghranam netraihi. So, with his eyes, he had focused on the tip of the nose, and The eyes are described by all other visheshanas here, all the adjectives. Kinchit prakashastimitogrataraihi netraihi, bhruvikriyayam virata prasangaihi netraihi, and avispandita pakshmamalaihi netraihi. So these three adjectives are given for the word netraihi. So kinchit prakashastimitogrataraihi. So the eyes are slightly visible, slightly open. So kinchit prakasha. So stimita and ugra taraihi. The tara is the pupil of the eye. They are a little visible. Kinchit prakasha. The word prakasha means light. The word prakasha also means visible. And here it is the sense of visible. So they are slightly visible. So the eyes are not fully closed, but they are slightly open. And therefore the pupil of the eye is a little visible. Kinchit prakasha. And it is stimita, means very steady. So it's utterly motionless. And then ugra, they are very powerful. So such are the pupils of the eyes of the Lord. Kinchit prakashastimito grataraihi. And secondly, bhru vikriyayam virata prasangaihi. There is no occasion now. All occasion has ceased. Virata means stopped. Prasanga is occasion. For the movement of the eyebrows. So bhru vikriyayam. It is only till the person gets to the highest position of yoga, the highest attainment of yoga, that there will be some movement of the eyebrow. The movement of the eyebrows are described in texts like Mandala Brahmana Upanishad and in many other yogic texts. When the highest state is attained, all the movements of even the eyebrows come to an utter standstill. So bhru vikriyayam, vikriya is change or movement. So they have all come to a halt now. Bhru vikriyayam virata prasangaihi, netraihi avispandita pakshmamalaihi. And the pakshma refers to the eyelash. Pakshma mala refers to the thick eyelashes. So avispandita, they are not stirring at all. We can see that we are all winking our eyes every now and then unconsciously. So it is almost like a reflexive action that is just going on, reflex action that is just going on. And in the state of meditation, that is not to happen. So that state of motionlessness of even the eyelashes can happen only when the mind is fixed deep inside. So when the eye is not functioning externally, it's only then it's possible. And therefore avispandita pakshmamalaihi. There is also a reference to the beauty of the thick growth of the eyelashes here. So that's why they are referred to as pakshmamala. And therefore avispandita pakshmamalaihi, without any slightest stirring. Avispandita, spanda is movement, and there is absolutely no spandana there. Netrair avispandita pakshmamalaihi lakshikrita ghranam adho mayukhaihi. So in Sanskrit, the word lakshya and laksha are both used to denote the target, and therefore he is now focusing on the nasikagra. So there is a description of the nasagra drishti in various yogic works. So karanani abhishkritya sthanuvat nishchalatmakaha atmanam hridaye dhyayet nasagran nyasta lochanaha. The focusing on the tip of the nose is described in many yogic texts. So samprekshya nasikagram swam was the verse that is given already from the Bhagavad Gita, from the 6th chapter. There are also other descriptions which say nasagran nyasta nayanaha. So the eyes focused on the tip of the nose, samvritasyaha, the mouth closed. So when you are in a state of sleep or when you are drowsy, then the mouth may be a bit open. But here in the state of dhyana, samvritasyaha, the mouth has to be consciously kept closed, and it will remain so after some time. Sunischalaha, so without any movement. Dhyayita manasa devam uro vishtabhya chagrataha, and the chest must be pressed a little forward. So, uro vishtabhya chagrataha. These are the descriptions that we get in various texts on yoga. So, for example, Hatha Yoga Pradipika gives this description: Antarlakshya vilina chitta pavanaha yogi yada vartate drishtya nischala taraya. So, the tara is referred to here also. Bahiradah pashyan napashyan napi. As it is a bit open and a bit closed, it is called pashyan napashyan napi. Mudreyam khalu shambhavi bhavati sa labdha prasadad guroho. It is only by the Guru's grace that this mudra can be obtained. And shunya shunya vilakshanam spurajitat tattvam padam shambhavam. So, where is this experience of the shambhava pada, shambhava sthana? And there is also the reference of ardhon milita lochanaha. So, the eyes half open. Sthiramanaha nasagra dattekshanaha chandrarkavapi linatam upanayan nispanda bhavena yaha. So, these are all descriptions that we get in yoga texts which show how the mind becomes still when the concentration is made upon the tip of the nose. So, this is what is described in this verse. The next verse is even more beautiful, so which refers to the condition of the vital airs, the 5 pranas of Lord Shiva. Avrishti sambrambhamivambuvaham apamivadharam anuttarangam antascharanam marutam nirodhat nivata nishkampamiva pradipam. In these verses you can see Kalidasa at his best, both at his poetic best and spiritual best. So, he says, Avrishti sambrambhamivambuvaham. So, Lord Shiva looked like a cloud which was full of water but was not discharging the water. So, it was almost about to shower, but so full of water, so charged with water, and such a cloud has a charm and beauty of its own. So, avrishti sambrambham ivambuvaham. And secondly, he was also comparable to a sheet of water or a reservoir of water, apamivadharam, a lake, anuttarangam, which has no waves at all. You can see that if it is in a cup that there is some water contained, the waves that can be caused, so it may be very easy to cause some waves, but they will subside very easily also. But the wider the surface, it becomes slower to subside. So, the waves keep on moving, and when it is a lake or a pond, it is still difficult. In yogic texts, the mind of a yogi is compared to an ocean which has no waves. So, it's the expression that is used in many yogic texts is nistaranga mahodadhi. It's a vast ocean, mahodadhi, so which is nistaranga, so which has absolutely no waves at all. The very opening sentence of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is yogaha chitta vritti nirodhaha. So, it's a full control, a thorough cessation of all mental functions, chitta vritti. All the modifications of the mind, they are all brought to a halt and to a standstill. The chitta vrittis are compared to the waves in the pond or in the ocean. So, Shiva's mind is obviously a vast ocean. So, it is very easy to create ripples in a vast sheet of water, and even just as a moving wind. So, even a slow moving wind can cause some ripples, but in the case of the mind of Shiva, it is like a vast ocean where is not a single wave at all. So, it is at an utter standstill state it is. Apam ivadharam. Apam adharam means the reservoir of water. Anuttarangam. So, there are no surging waves there. Taranga is wave. Uttaranga is surging wave. So, anuttarangam with no surging wave at all. So, there is absolutely no movement. Antascharanam marutam nirodhat. All of this on account of the control of the marutam, the various pranavayus, so which keep moving inside. So, in our normal course, all the 5 pranas are functioning. So, they are all antaschara, moving within the body. Antascharanam marutam nirodhat, on account of a full control over the 5 breaths, namely prana, apana, samana, vyana and udana. So, Shiva is appearing like this. And there is another beautiful comparison that is given. Nivata nishkampam iva pradeepam. He looked like a lamp, pradeepa, which was absolutely nishkampa, which is not throbbing at all, which is not stirring at all, on account of the total absence of wind or moving air. Nivata. So, where the air is not moving, the lamp will be very steady. So, in yogic practice like Trataka, for example, one is asked to focus on the dip of the flame of a lamp, so which has to be very still. So, it must be placed in a place where there is absolutely no air moving, and it is only in such a place that it can be so nishkampa, so absolutely motionless. And the commentators show that the first one, avrishti samrambham, which refers to the position, the description of the clouds above, and apamivadharam to the situation below. The two refer to the situation with the prana and with the apana. So the one above and one below. And antascharanam marutam nirodhas refers to the other three pranas, namely vyana, udana and samana, all being motionless. So nivata nishkampam pradipam. We can see that even the Bhagavad Gita gives the same example of the motionless and still lamp. Yatha deepo nivatastho nengate sopama smrita yogino yatachittasya yunjataha yogamatmanaha. So you can see the presence of root yuj in several words here yoginaha and yatachittasya yunjataha yogamatmanaha. In all these words you can find that we have the root yuji, and this is the embodiment of yoga, and therefore in that high state there is absolutely no movement. There is illumination, but there is no stirring. In fact, we get a description of this even in the Yoga Taravali of Shankara. So there he says, Chittendriyanam chiranigrahena shwasa prachare shamite yamindraha nivata deepa iva nischalangaha manonmani magna dhiyo bhavanti. And therefore, they are like nischalanga, like the nivata deepa. So everywhere the same description is given of the deepa being absolutely motionless because of the absence of the various winds in the body. So nivata deepa iva nischalangaha manonmani magna dhiyo bhavanti.
किञ्चित् प्रकाशस्तिमितोऽग्रतारैः भ्रूविक्रियायां विरतप्रसङ्गैः नेत्रैरविस्पन्दितपक्ष्ममालैः लक्ष्यीकृतघ्राणम् अधोमयूखैः किञ्चित् प्रकाशस्तिमितोऽग्रतारैः भ्रूविक्रियायां विरतप्रसङ्गैः अविस्पन्दितपक्ष्ममालैः अधोमयूखैर्नेत्रैः लक्ष्यीकृतघ्राणं संयमिनं ददर्श अवृष्टिसंरम्भमिवाम्बुवाहम् अपामिवाधारम् अनुत्तरङ्गम् अन्तश्चराणां मरुतां निरोधात् निवातनिष्कम्पमिव प्रदीपम् अवृष्टिसंरम्भम् अम्बुवाहमिव अपामाधारमिव अनुत्तरङ्गम् अन्तश्चराणां मरुतां निरोधात् निवात निष्कम्पं निवात निष्कम्पमिव प्रदीपं संयमिनं तदर्श संयमिनं ददर्श.
The next verse gives a description of the tejas emanating kapala netrantara labdha margair jyotif prarohair uditai shirastaha mrunala sutra adhika saukumaryam balasya lakshmim glapayantam indoho. Now, while he is witnessing the inner light, now that shows itself externally also, says Kalidasa. Kapala netrantara labdha margaihi. So, there is one aperture at the top of the head, so it's known as Brahmarandhra, and that is what is referred to as Kapala Netrantara. So from the inside of that, Labdha Margaihi have escaped Jyotif Prarohaihi, sprouts of light or shoots of luster, Uditaihi Shirastaha, emanating from his head. So it is in a way even physically to be seen. Mrunala Sutradhika Saukumaryam Balasya Lakshmim Glapayantam Indoho. And upon the head of Shiva is the moon. And the moon is very endearing to see because of the glow on the moon being very tender. So, Mrunala Sutradhika Saukumaryam, the tenderness of the glow upon the crescent moon that Shiva wears on his head is as tender as or more tender than Mrunala Sutra, the lotus stalk. And therefore, that young moon, so Balasya Indoho Lakshmim Glapayantam, so even that is becoming overshadowed by the bright glow that is emanating from the Kapala of Lord Shiva. So, there are some differences in the commentators. So they say that the Kapala here refers to not just the Kapala of Lord Shiva or the Brahmarandhra, and it is rather the Brahma Kapala that Lord Shiva wears on his head, and the skulls of the skull of the previous Brahma, so the Brahma of the previous Kalpa, so that Shiva wears as an ornament on his head. And it is through the apertures in that skull that this light is passing through, is what is said by some commentators, but some commentators say it is right from the Brahmarandhra of Lord Shiva himself. So the gist anyhow is that the glow and the inner light that the Lord is beholding within as an inner experience has also its external manifestation as a light, so passing through the aperture in the Brahmarandhra. We have come almost to 1 hour. I'll finish this one verse and stop. Mano Navadwara Nishiddha Vritti Hridivyavasthapya Samadhivashyam Yamaksharam Vedavido Vidustam Atmanam Atmanyavalokayantam. With this verse concludes the tapas of Lord Shiva. So Mano Navadwara Nishiddha Vritti. Our mind is constantly functioning through the various holes in our body. So we have the 5 holes in our face itself, so the 5 indriyas, and the 5 indriyas have totally 7 holes in our face, so the 2 eyes and the 2 nostrils, the 2 ears and the mouth, so these constitute the 7, and the other 2 holes in the body are considered the payu and the upastha, the organs of regeneration and the excretion. So these are the 9 dwaras in the body. Now the passing of the mind through any of these, so is all now brought to a halt. Nishiddha vritti. Vritti is functioning. Functioning has been brought to a halt here. Nishiddha. It has all been blocked through any of the 9 doors. So it's not merely that the eyes are closed. So it's not that one is not speaking. So even the ears are closed. So that is not something very easily possible. So we may close our eyes with our willpower, but it's not easy to close our ears. So it's not an external closure, but it's because the mind that is turned inwards that the eyes are closed. And therefore, mano navadvara nishiddha vritti hridi vyavasthapya, because the mind is established in the heart. Samadhi vashyam. So it is now under full control on account of the samadhi or the full concentration. And yam aksharam vedavido vidustam atmanam atmanyavalokayantam, and is now beholding the self with the self. So the person who is seeing, the agent of the action of seeing is the self. The object being seen is the self, and the instrument is also the self. So atmanam, atman, and the adhikarana or the locus is also the self. So he is beholding himself within himself. Atmanam atmanyavalokayantam. And that Atman that he is beholding is the Akshara, and it is known only by the Kshetravids. So Kshetravid means one who knows the field, and Akshara is what will never die, what is permanent. And therefore Aksharam Atmanam Yam Kshetravidaha Viduhu. In the Bhagavad Gita we get a beautiful description of Kshetrajna Yoga in the 13th chapter. So the verses there can be seen. So they give you a description of Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramitya Vidheyate. O Kaunteya, it is this very body that is called the Kshetra. So Etad yo veti tam prahuhu kshetrajnayati tad vidaha kshetrajnyanchapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetrajnyor jnanam etad jnanam matam mama. So these are all described in the Bhagavad Gita. So we do not have time to go through in detail. And in the verses 5 and 6 in Bhagavad Gita, the 13th chapter, what is meant by Kshetra is detailed. Mahabhutan yahankaraha buddhiravyaktamevacha indriyani dashaikancha panchachendriya gocharaha ichcha dveshaha sukham dukkham sanghatas chetana dhritihi etat kshetram samasena savikaram udahardam. So all this is referred to as Kshetra. So Kshetravit means one who knows his body. So all aspects of the body, so one who knows. It is as though one knows one's own field very well. So tam atmanam atmanyavalokayantam. In the Bhagavad Gita we get descriptions of the withdrawal of the mind from all the gates. So the Bhagavad Gita says in the 6th and 7th chapter, Sarvadvarani sanyamya mano hridi niruddhya cha murdhini adhaya atmanah pranam asthito yoga dharanam. So even in the Kathopanishad you get, so yada panchavatishtanti jnanani manasa saha buddhishcha navicheshtati tamahu paramangatim tam yogamiti manyante sthiram indriya dharanam. So all the 9 doors are listed in a famous verse. Nayana shravane dve dve, the 2 eyes and the 2 ears. Nasike, the 2 nostrils of the nose, and vadanam tatha, and then payu pasthecha dehesmin navadvarani dehinam. So all these have been stopped. So they have been completely closed, and it's possible only when the mind is established in the heart. So in the Bhagavad Gita also there is this reference to the placing of the mind in the heart. Then in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita there is a description of kurmongani va sarvashaha. Actually there is a sort of a sucking effect inwards in all the 9 gates of knowledge. These are all gates of the knowledge of the external world, and for the internal world to be open, the gates of the external world have to be closed. So attaining that state, Shiva is performing tapas, and Manmatha saw him in that state.
कपालनेत्रान्तरलब्धमार्गैः ज्योतिः प्ररोहैरुदितैः शिरस्तः मृणालसूत्राधिकसो कुमार्यां बालस्य लक्ष्मीं ग्लपयन्तमिन्दोः कपालनेत्रान्तरलब्धमार्गैः ज्योतिप्ररोहैः शिरस्तः उदितैर्ज्योतिः प्ररोहैः मृणालसूत्राधिकसौकुमार्याम् इन्दोः बालस्य इन्दोः लक्ष्मीं ग्लपयन्तं संयमिनं ददर्श मनोनवद्वारनिषिद्धवृत्ति हृदि व्यवस्थाप्य समाधिवश्यं यमक्षरं क्षेत्रविदो विदुस्तम् आत्मानम् आत्मनि अवलोकयन्तम् नवद्वारनिषिद्धवृत्ति समाधिवश्यं मनो हृदि व्यवस्थाप्य क्षेत्रविदो यमक्षरं विदुः तमात्मानम् आत्मनि अवलोकयन्तम् संयमिनं ददर्श.
With this, we bring to a close this session. There was the description of yoga, and as the International Yoga Day was also fast approaching, I thought we could delve a little more on the yogic description in this set of verses. So we will encounter one more situation of yoga, as I said, in the occasion of the tapas of Parvati, which we come across in the 5th canto. So we shall all meet next week. Namaskar. Thank you for your patient listening. Namaskar.